Welcome back, comrades. This is Gaming with Austin, and today we're on the 30th episode of the Utopian Community series. This is season 2, by the way, still. Here we are. One thing I found out, in Toy Story Land, my mom, I get that my mom has 3 dogs in her house. I get that. She likes dachshunds. I respect her opinion on that. So, when I head off to Disney World with her, me and my mom might ride the Slinky Dog roller coaster. Whenever it goes to taking selfies with the mascots at Disney World and Universal, don't bring a selfie stick with you. Okay? Because you might hurt someone with it. You might hurt someone with it. Leave your selfie stick at home. Just leave it at home. Leave it at your house. Okay? I've had a concave lens. It increased the field of view, which would mean it'll be easier for me to perform a selfie with the mascots at the theme parks. Yes, I get that Disney World is the land of mascots for me. If you're a fan of mascots, it's like I am. Or never gone to Disney World, now is your chance to buy some tickets. Now, I found a loophole around low-income families not being able to afford a trip to Disney World. I found a loophole around it. I found a loophole around it. Yes, it takes some serious budgeting to do this, but I was able to get it done. Even though I'm part of a low-income family, I was able to get it done. All it takes is some very serious budgeting. Some people just can't do that because they have a lot of medical bills, especially if they have family members that have disability or are seriously ill. like those with cancer. Because a lot of times, with cancer treatments, insurance will not cover it. And oftentimes, especially with the more aggressive cancers, like neuroblastoma or brain cancer, treatment might not... It's basically like the lottery. Going through cancer treatment is like the lottery. When you invest in the stock market, there is a chance you're going to win more. You're going to profit from the stock market. There's a chance you're going to lose from the stock market. The best thing to do is leave the stock market alone. Because in capitalism, there's a chance you're going to earn a lot of money, and there's a chance you're going to lose that money while working as CEO. There is a risk to running a business. It's a great risk that many of us don't know about. And the consequence of capitalism is bankruptcy, possible bankruptcy. What makes totalitarian countries great places for, such great tax havens, even though they're pretty repressive, it's that the reason is so the dictator can stay in power. Because the dictator needs to use his money, his need to be rich is he has to emulate his power to his people. The reason I say his is that most dictators are male. More like they. Power to their people. Over their people. To see who's the boss. What I hate about hierarchical societies is that there's a very good chance of disorder in a hierarchical society. Which is exactly what's going on in the Middle East right now as a result of totalitarian governments. We shouldn't go for a hierarchical society at all. Usually totalitarian countries are usually ruled by, the form of government that most totalitarian countries are oligarch. Totalitarian countries are usually ruled by the oligarchs. How are cats secretly keeping us alive? We need cats in our ecosystem, because without it, not only we're going to go into a famine and possibly even spiral out of order as a result of the food scarcity, we're also going to end up going into World War III without cats. Because cats are very important. If we didn't have cats, the world would go into another global war. One of the factors that will cause World War III would be food shortage, brought on by climate change. If we want to prevent a future war, we need to democratize the world. And form strong unions. Strong international unions. Similar to the European Union. Similar to the European Union. So we could have peace that can last for centuries, possibly millennia or even eons. The reason why no animal can live in harmony with one another, some of it has to do with the food chain. Some animals are higher up in the food chain than others. And some animals are obligate carnivores. We humans encompass the entire food chain. We do in fact encompass it. Sort of. You know, it's more like whenever it goes to the meat industry, they'd see it more economical to eat the herbivores or the omnivores instead of carnivores. Because for carnivores, I was talking about like obligate carnivores, not the usual carnivore. Because I get that dogs are carnivores, but they are not obligate carnivores, like cats are. Like cats are obligate carnivores, dogs are facultative carnivores. Dogs usually go out and scavenge carcasses for their consumption. The problem with animals living together in peace, like all of them at once, living in peace, it all has to do with the fact that it'll cause the ecosystem to collapse if that happens. We need a food chain. The food chain must be put into a hierarchy to ensure the balance of the ecosystem. And cats are higher up they can only encompass the secondary consumer and up. At least secondary consumer, because they are obligate carnivores. Without obligate carnivores in our ecosystem, we are screwed. Unless there's an omnivore that doesn't just eat mice and rats, but also other pests. Even weeds would get eaten too. Imagine an animal that did that. That'd be pretty useful. Like, before we can produce better rat poisons we have to stick with cats. We'd have to stick with cats. Rat poison simply doesn't work in the long run. It's only effective in the short term. The only hierarchy that works is biological hierarchy. Political hierarchy can cause chaos. And inequality. It can cause... The hierarchy can cause people... can ultimately lead to chaos. Like constant civil wars going on as a result of it. What we need is a true democracy. Like, economic hierarchy doesn't work either. Capitalism doesn't work in the long run. Because if we were in a state of monopolistic competition, like, if we were in a state of constant competition, we're going to end up seeing prices, like, prices would start off being very cheap at first, but then we would go into a state of hyperinflation. A state of hyperinflation. We should put the means of production under common ownership. Like, in every sector. With the factories, we need to keep them well maintained instead of having them run down and turned into a wasteland, into a scene from a post-apocalyptic film. In true capitalism, workers, like, the most vulnerable are exploited for it's not just the average young adult that's exploited solely so the oligarchs can make as much money as possible. Children are exploited, too, along with the elderly and the disabled. And capitalism ultimately leads to oligarchy. And the last stage of capitalism is called imperial capitalism. Like the state, then what comes after that stage? Fascism. Would be the stage after imperial capitalism. Like fascist capitalism, which the mode of production is extremely capitalistic, which they are ultra-nationalist. Like, the country would have an extremely capitalistic economy, they'd be ultra-nationalist, extremely militaristic, extremely authoritarian, like straight up, like their method of political repression that they would use sheer brutality. Police brutality would be really common. Like, they'd be what I would call brutalitarian. Like, extreme totalitarianism. Political repression would be extreme. They'd be extremely reactionary. They'd be extremely militaristic, extremely capitalistic, and also they would also be ultra-nationalists, too. Yes, they'd also be extremely racist. What it would be is they'd basically be fascist capitalists. Like, fascist capitalists are basically far-right, ultranationalistic capitalists who want to get rid, some of those, like, they believe in extreme Darwinism. Not only will the schools be like in the fascist country, students would be led to believe that humans are very superior to all other animals. That they treat animals like non-living beings. They'd even be led to believe that, I have to quote this, so my comrades don't accuse me of racism. Quote, they'd led students into believing that Europeans are superior to all other tribal groups. That the wealthy are very superior to the poor. That the wealthy can be allowed to go into politics to become oligarchs. Like, their form of government would be a combination of plutocracy, ethnocracy, they'd be extremely nationalistic. They would also, like, it would be basically it'll be a fascist military dictatorship. Like, the forms of nationalism they would do would, like, far-right ethnic nationalism is what they would believe in. When it goes to businesses, they'd be extremely Darwinistic. What we need to do is bring the power back to the people so we could tax the rich. Even though which would mean that we would bring back a more democratic society. There are factors out of... capitalism is what causes the economy to be unstable. What we need to do is we need to produce more goods that can produce more goods. The reason for that is so we can become self-sufficient and also aid in the colonization of planets. Because eventually, we would have no choice but to leave our planet behind. We would have no fucking choice but to leave Earth behind. $50 million years into the... In about 200,000 years, the Chernobyl explosion nuclear site would be safe again. In about 20,000 years. That is because the radioactive elements tend to have a sort of long half-life, but at the same time kind of short as well. One thing the fascist regime would order for all the businesses to do, they'd order all the businesses to price gouge everything. That's how they'd be extremely Darwinistic. The regime would do everything they can to keep the ethnic minorities poor. Similar to how tipping was, the waiters and waitresses was originated. It originated from racism. I'm against racism. The reason tipping existed is done to keep the white people rich while they made the minorities poor. The freedmen poor. Those who were once slaves. The effects of that racism are still being felt today. Some of that led to... Then, the next stage of racism involved tribal segregation. It's not just black people that were subject to discrimination in America throughout the history of the United States. Even the natives were subject to discrimination as well. Even the indigenous tribes were subject to discrimination as well. Want to know what the straight up opposite of plutocracy is? Ergotocracy. Which means the rule of the proletariat. The dictatorship of the proletariat. It's more closer to democracy than plutocracy is. And how the rise of the fascist country happened in my story. One of the hints voter fraud would be used by foreign governments, like Russia, like foreign totalitarian governments, like Russia, North Korea, Iran, Saudi Arabia, even though they're if I do run for president, I'd start cutting ties with Saudi Arabia. But I'd still have ties with Europe. Figuratively, I'd start a trade war with all of the Middle East except for Israel. I'd help impose a peace treaty. And food scarcity on a massive scale, like on an ecological scale, like ecological collapse would cause the collapse of society as we know it. Not just in humans, but every animal on Earth will feel the effects. Some factors to an ecological collapse include... There are some factors that are man-made, like climate change, as a result of the burning of fossil fuels and also intensive animal farming. What we need to do is stop with the intensive animal farming and go towards a more eco-friendly diet. Anyways, this is it for this video. Don't forget to leave a like if you like this video. Dislike if you disliked it, subscribe for more. Share this with your comrades on social media. As always, thank you for watching, and peace out.